Imagine if this weekend's box office was enough to jumpstart the summer movie season. Find out now. I'm Adam. This is Does It Hold Up? Box Office Edition, where we cover what were the top 10 movies at the box office this past weekend. We look at a few more charts and we do a flashback to a movie from the past to see how well it did. Let's start as always with the top 10 movies at the box office this past weekend. And there's no surprise, well, maybe a little bit of a surprise. Ryan Reynolds' new movie, If, comes in number 1 with $33.7 million, which I think is a little lower than expected. They were looking for more 40 plus million. So I'm not sure what that really says about the movie. This isn't one that really interested me. It's kind of just like Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, but like live action, sort of weird. I don't know. It just didn't look that good. So it's not surprising that it had this number, but I'm sure they were trying to bank on Ryan Reynolds being such a huge star that people might just go check it out anyway. They did not. In second place is Kingdom for the Planet of the Apes with $25.4 million, a 56% drop in its second weekend, but in just 2 weeks, it passed $100 million by about $700,000, so it's doing all right. In third place, also new to the list, is The Strangers, Chapter 1. It did all right in its opening weekend with $11.8 million. I'm sure the studio is happy to hear that because they have a planned trilogy for this movie. The Strangers Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 3. Chapter 2 is actually supposed to come out sometime fall this year. So that's a little interesting. They shot them back to back. We'll see how well this one ends up doing as it stays in theaters to know how well Chapter 2 might do. In fourth place is The Fall Guy in its third week with another $8.3 million, only a 39% drop, $62.8 million at the domestic box office so far. It's doing okay. It opened up well, it's held pretty well over the last 2 weeks. Will it get to that $100 million? I don't think so, but only time will tell. In fifth place is Challengers in its fourth week with $2.8 million, a 34% drop, and a rather disappointing $43.4 million here at the domestic box office. They probably wanted a lot higher. I wanted it to be a lot higher. I thought this movie was going to be a huge hit, one that just nobody saw coming and just stayed and made all this money, and it's not panning out that way. Go figure. In sixth place is a new movie to the list as well, Back to Black, the Amy Winehouse story. It took in $2.8 million. Not sure anybody was really asking for this movie, and they didn't use Amy's voice at all. They let the singer, the actress, do the singing, and I bet that turned a lot of fans off. Probably why it didn't do that well. In seventh place is Tarot in its third week with another $2 million, 41% drop, 15.4 so far. In eighth place, Godzilla Kong, The New Empire with another $1.6 million in its eighth week in the box office, a 36% drop, but it's gradually sneaking up to that $200 million. It's only behind by about $5.6 million right now. Can it get there? I don't know. We should have a bunch of new movies coming out soon. In ninth place, also new to the list, our fourth new movie to the list this week, is The Blue Angels with $1.4 million. This is just one of those IMAX big screen spectacular movies about the Blue Angels, the pilots who fly jets. I'm not sure anybody wants to watch that for a solid 2 hours, but pretty good start for this movie. I expect it's the only money that this one will really make. Probably out of the top 10 next week. And rounding out the top 10 is Civil War, who just sneaks into the top 10 by about $10,000. But it did take in $1,050,000, a 44% drop, 67.2 overall in 6 weeks at the box office. It's going to be out of the top 10 next week, but it had a much better run than I thought it was going to have after such a disappointing opening. 4 movies fell out of the top 10 this past weekend. First was Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the re-release after 2 weeks. Unsung Hero after a pretty solid 3 weeks. Abigail after 4 weeks. And Kung Fu Panda after a very impressive 10 weeks. This is the part of the show where we take a look at the 2023 weekend versus the 2024 weekend. How is the box office stacking up? Is it holding up against last year? Well, this is where we find out. So last year in 2023, the box office did pretty well, had a massive jump of about $21 million. It took in $121.9 million overall. The number one movie that weekend was Fast X with a $65 million plus opening. So that's why it's such a big leap there. This weekend, the total gross for all the movies was $96.2 million. A little bit of an uptick from last weekend, but not as big as last year's growth here. Led the way, obviously, by Ryan Reynolds' If. I don't know. We got close last weekend. We fell a little behind this weekend. I just don't know if there's a lot of movies coming out this summer that are really going to close that gap all that much. So I think we're going to have to rely heavily on fall movies being better this year than they were last year if we really want to, get close to what we made last year at the box office. I don't know. Let's take a look at the top 10 movies so far in 2024. This is what the money they've made in 2024, even if they were a 2023 release. It's just fun to look at what kind of movies are making what kind of money. In first place is Dune Part 2 with $282 million. Godzilla Kong in second place with $194. Kung Fu Panda 4 with $192 million in third place. Ghostbusters Frozen Empires takes that fourth place spot with $112 million. Won't stay there for long though. Probably next week it's going to drop down because Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes jumps into the charts in fifth place here with $100.7 million. So expect it to be in fourth place next week. The next four movies all drop down one spot. Bob Marley, One Love to 6th, Wonka to 7th, Migration to 8th, and Mean Girls to 9th. Civil War stayed in the 10th spot there, and one movie fell out of the top 10. It was The Beekeeper. A little disappointing. I'd rather see The Beekeeper still on the chart compared to something like, Mean Girls and Civil War. Okay, let's take a look at the genre distribution chart. This is where we take a look at what is the total gross for the box office so far in 2024 and what genres are making the most money compared to that total. In first place, which has basically been first place since the beginning of the year, is action movies with about 41.5%. Comedy moves into second place here, dropping drama to third. Musical stays in fourth. Horror movies moves up to fifth place, pushing adventure down one into sixth place. Romantic comedies and thriller and suspense also switch spots here for seventh and eighth. And then all other movies are there at the bottom, making up about 0.8% of the total gross at the box office in 2024, which currently sits at $2.38 billion. All right, that's it for the charts regarding this past weekend's box office. And as we've been doing the last couple of weeks here on the show, I take a look back at an old movie to see how well it did at the box office and if it was profitable. We always have conversations about how much money a movie made, but we never have a conversation about, how much money did the studio make? Did the movie actually make any money? Just because it made $500 million at the box office doesn't necessarily mean it was a profitable movie. So every week I just take a look at an old movie to kind of see where it landed. This week we're going to take a look at The Strangers from May 30th, 2008 in honor of, The Strangers Chapter 1 coming out this week. So let's go ahead and take a look at that chart now. Domestically, week 1, The Strangers brought in $28.3 million. The studios kept 60% of that, so about $17 million. Week 2, the studios kept 55% of the $12.9 million, so they got to bring home just over $7 million. Domestically, week 3 plus, the movie brought in $11.3 million. Studios took in 50% of that, so about $5.5 million. Internationally, the movie made another $30.5 million. Studios got 40% for $12.1 million. China, sorry, no numbers here again. They weren't always reported back in the day, and a lot of these movies didn't even get releases over there because they just weren't big enough of a property. So, nothing there. But if we take a look, this movie had a budget of about $9 million. I gave a generous marketing budget here of about $10 million. I remember the marketing for this movie. It was a lot of just one trailer, two trailers. That was it. The cast showed up at Comic-Con to talk about the movie. There wasn't a lot of posters anywhere. It was kind of just like this slow build hype of people talking about, hey, did you hear about this movie coming out? There wasn't a lot of TV spots. There wasn't. So even 10 million might be a little generous, but that's what I'm going to go with. The movie grossed just over 83 million. Their net income was 41.9 million for an estimated profit of $22.7 million. So a lot of people are asking, why did The Strangers Pray at Night? Why did that sequel/prequel exist? Why does The Strangers Chapter 1 exist? Why is this random horror movie from 2008 getting these legacy sequels? Well, it says it right there. All the way back in 2008, this movie made $23 million for the studio. That's the money they got to put back in their pocket when everything was all said and done, just from the theatrical release. This movie brought in another about $20 million in home video as well. So they got a nice chunk of change from that, let alone, streaming rights and all of those things. So this movie made quite a bit of money for everyone involved. Why would they not want to repeat that? And considering The Strangers Chapter 1 had a reported budget of somewhere around $8 million, I have a feeling it's going to end up making quite a bit of money as well. Now, you're saying, oh, maybe that marketing budget, you put these other movies up at 75 million. Sure. Let's go ahead and double the marketing budget on this movie and bump it up to 20 million. They still made a $13 million profit. Hell, bump it up to 30 million. They still made a $3 million profit. It was still profitable in the theatrical market, which is ultimately the goal for every single movie that gets released. Not every movie is going to be profitable here, and they have to make up their money in a bunch of other ways. But if you can be profitable while playing in theaters, that's a good movie. At least in the studio's eyes. All right, that's it for me this week and talking about this weekend's box office. I'll be back next Tuesday with another wrap-up of what happened this weekend. I'll be back later this week as well with a new movie review. What's it going to be on? I don't know yet. Kind of play that by ear, so if you have suggestions of what you want to see me review, go ahead and drop those in the comments below. Also, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff to see what's going on the channel, as there's a lot of good things. Until I see you next time, just remember to be good to yourself, be kind to others, and as always, keep watching movies.